and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. My name is Shogun. Joining me today is Mr. Bob Bant, and we are going to talk about AI and machine learning, psychedelics, shamanic teachings, CRISPR, transhumans, and evolutionary branches of Homo sapiens. But before we get into that, make sure you've joined the Roundtable Discord server. We record podcasts every day at 9 p.m. Central. Check out announcements for upcoming events and RT Podcast channel for hundreds of great past events on our multiple YouTube and BitChute and SoundCloud accounts and channels, all with their own unique episodes for you to listen to, like, follow, and subscribe, please. That being said, welcome, Mr. Bob Bant. How are you, sir?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining me. So, interesting topics. Why don't we dive in? So AI and machine learning is the first subject. What is your background or interest in that, and what do you think is its significance for us?
Before we get started, I wanted to express that these are only opinions. Instead of giving a formula, I'm trying to paint a picture. The information I've gotten have been from sources with white papers, even though I haven't read the white papers. They're in different symposiums, different talks, and it's a very progressive landscape that I'm trying to share a perspective narrative that hopefully evolves and gets developed from people's feedback. I'd start with the tools that the AI has. We've got on the hardware side, which are neural nets, and on the software side we have like GPT-3, machine learning. The outcome of the combination of these two, like deepfake, where you can have a seamless like composite of video and voice that is hard to determine if it's authentic or not. Another side, we're looking at Go, the computer that beat the human. The first generation of that computer won 4 out of 5 games, and it took 6 months for it to get to that point. The second generation, after 2 weeks, beat the first generation 100-0. And this is relevant in the pace of acceleration. It's beyond exponential. The further translation of that is we look at Tesla and their production line, the capacity that it has, it's making either through software or changes to the metal every 3 hours. And they described how a company like Ford spent $100 million for F-150 to make a change, and it takes a year to go through that process. With Tesla, they're able to do that at about $1 per change in their implementation. So it's the pace of change that we're being introduced to. The tempo of it is beyond my comprehension. Anyway, and the process ends up generating funds for them to enhance on the hardware side. And my background is I used to be an IT consultant. The floating point, which is the mathematical portion of the computer's process, can go to so many -10 powers, so many decimal points that you're putting into it. With neural nets, you don't need to have that kind of accuracy or precision. So instead of 64-bit, 8-bit and 16-bit can give the same results if you want autonomous driving. So you don't have to have a picture perfect color accurate as long as the boundaries are recognized and the algorithm is able to follow the movements and recognize organic versus non-organic. The dimensions that it has to deal with is horrendously complicated. This is going to translate to everything else in our lives. And the factories that Tesla has is the real innovation, and the software that they have. And the new Dojo chip that they created, it reduces the precision, and at the same time it has an on-chip network connection. So the bottleneck of the chips talking together in a traditional supercomputer, the more processors you get, there's a diminishing return as you add. It's not 100 to 100. In this case, it is. So you can just keep adding arrays and you don't get the bottleneck because the communication between the interchips happens on the silicon die, and they've gone a space further, and they've put it on a single platter. So there's something between 200 to 300 chips in one processor and like 25 processors per platter. Then they put those in rows in racks. The racks goes into the servers, and then there's the servers that go in banks. And there's not that many of them, and that theoretically is able to achieve a neural net with over 1.2 trillion data points. And the human brain, I believe it's in the single trillion range. Don't quote me on it, but we're getting very close. And the second generation of Dojo is already being produced, and it's being produced by the same algorithm that it's producing itself, similar to Go. And using machine learning, you give it parameters. They don't know how it works, really. They give it parameters, and the machine goes and comes out with the best solution with all the information it has without bias. And an example of it was, I'm sure a lot of people know, with Google Translate, they programmed from English to Portuguese, English to French, but the computer, without instructions, built a translation between French and Portuguese. They shut that down. They don't have a good handle on it. And the AI we have today is very weak AI. It's nothing that's a real threat. The threat is more the network that gets automated, because Russia has what was it called, Shogun? Was it Dead Man's Switch, or not Dead Man's? It was some kind of a switch where Russia would automatically launch if there was radiation and seismic activity, completely analog. But US has a completely intermeshed systems. When a troop of tanks or planes and now drones are attacking, they're all communicating with each other, and that data is being managed. That's different than general artificial intelligence and sentient artificial intelligence, artificial sentient, sorry. The general artificial intelligence that they're working on is the difference that each neural net that's being programmed, it's like walk straight, then turn right, and turn this device. That's one programming. Then if it wants to go left, or if it wants to do something else, it has to be reprogrammed from ground up. With general I/O, it's like APIs. Instead of like rewriting a spell checker in a software each time you're writing a application, you just hook the spell check into your software, and away we go. So in that same realm, once that kicks in, the pace of acceleration with AI, and it's a tool like a shovel or a fire. You can cook and heat people with it, or plant food, or you can bash someone in the head or burn their house. So I'm not getting into the good and evil notion of it. I just want to point out that the speed of the combination of these two technologies is going to bring forward something we can't even comprehend, just like the ships that the natives saw, the Spanish ships, the cognitive dissonance. What is that? And until one of them saw it, the rest could too. That's all I have to say about AI.
Thank you very much, my friend. Great information. So why don't we proceed to the second topic, which is psychedelics and shamanic teachings. Again, basically two questions. One, what is your background or interest in this? And secondly, what do you think its significance is or importance is for humanity?
Shamanic practices, most of my younger life when I did psychedelics, it was to exert control while I'm under the influence. I never really understood the real purpose of it. And there's so much evidence that what psychedelics does is we have a default neural pathway going from the back and front, and you can find this on TED Talks. That's what we usually operate in. The information goes back and forth. With psychedelics, it reduces that transmission, shuts that down, and allows for lateral communication by the sides of your brain. They're figuring deja vu is a sensation when the memory is recollected from a different path that it usually needs to go through. There's evidence that even animals, you were talking earlier on about drinking the urine of people who've had psilocybin. I might be saying that incorrectly, but go with it. With deers, they found that deers that eat psilocybin, other deers drink the urine. And another study has shown that what psychedelics ended up doing, it helped the evolution of consciousness. I ended up doing ayahuasca ceremonies down the line, and quite a bit of it. And at that point, I learned with guidance. I've been lucid dreaming all my life, and I didn't realize that the medicine plan and going through the shamanic journeys is ultimately you won't need them anymore. It teaches you how to become lucid in your dream and to be able to change the landscape and theme of your dream, which is a very powerful and fulfilling tool once it gets incorporated. But there's a lot of scary stuff we have to go through, deal with a lot of personal shortcomings that we don't want to see, and it makes it quite obvious what kind of an internal reality that exists, and we stop being as judgmental. The basics that I was taught as for doing the journey was that anything that exists has a right to exist, and give gratitude when you're seeing something that might be horrific, and then say, this is not something that I want. To be able to look at something and reject it and acknowledge it. So now you know it's not a part of you. You had free will to choose that that's not the path you want to take. And I don't want to give a quantitative attribute to whatever direction we may take, because other part of, now this is across Buddhism, shamanic value is that nothing inherently exists, that this is a form of assimilation, and this is the dream, and when we dream, that's a real reality, and that's the Tibetan yoga's perspective, and they've developed a wild system, which is wake-induced lucid dreaming, that can give the same experience as psychedelics, but I found for people who don't have that internal visual world, the psychedelics can break. It's like giving you an additional projection space, like a holodeck of your own. That once it breaks open, you have to realize our fears. We're seeing the big shadow, then we see it's a little mouse in the cartoon, and we laugh. We like to get scared. We get addicted to that feeling, and as we grow older, we realize danger is out there, but we'll always be guided. So if I run across the highway without looking, I'll get splattered. that if I look at both sides and don't cross where it's dangerous, the same danger exists, but now I have the ability to circumvent that danger. The same thing happens with psychedelics. When the pathways and everything gets reconfigured, our fundamental beliefs melt away, and then this universal oneness comes to light, and you realize we're the same entity, and it's very fulfilling. On the shamanic side of it, a lot of medicine plants are used to break what one of the Yaqui Indians, whether the character was real or not, hasn't really been determined, but it's irrelevant because the message is more relevant than the medium it's being presented in. And he talks about assemblage points. An assemblage point is the spot that we're in, the space that we're at. If I'm stressed, I'm anxious, that's my assemblage point. And that's the first layer, which is the tonal, the 3D world, the animalistic nature. Then you go to second attention, which is the novel. And on the novel side, what it's supposed to represent is if you have Mothman, if you have aliens, if you have angels, demons, mold people, nanobots, artificial into any of that aspect that we can't grab, and the way they describe it is so beautiful. The unknown shows enough, like the Bigfoot or the spaceship, just enough for us to chase it, but we can never catch it because it's unknowable. And it helps you to get rid of your self-importance, which is a huge barrier for us to accept that we don't know, and if once we think we know, we're unteachable. And learning to experience consciousness in non-linear, non-cohesive manner, but more encompassed, where the realization while you're dreaming is that you're not only you're the other characters as well as the background. So we're the complete package where there is no optical nerves, although there are the certain parts of the brain that has visualization gets activated in REM and other lucid dreams. It's a physically provable and quantifiable method of attaining a different state of consciousness, which is similar to Altered State of Consciousness movie, where through sleep deprivation, whatever other means that short circuits are predetermined expectation of what reality is going to be like. When I get up, I'm stepping on the floor is going to be there, that car is going to merge. All these predictive assumptions, we're living a step in future, not quite mindful of where we are. And if we get that stillness, we realize this reality is extremely fluid. But we need the teachings and understanding so that we understand what we're running towards or running from. Because certain things you want to run from, and those who can't discern can be running towards hellfire, thinking it's the light. So discernment is a huge aspect of developing to be able to interpret what's being shown to us. And by the time we learn what's being shown to us, we don't need it anymore. And the other fundamental difference of shamanism, it's in different cultures, someone is born special. And it could be autism, it could be schizophrenia, any mental difference that our society sees, it assumes it's abnormal. Maybe this is the next evolution of humanity. We don't know. And there's a definite function for it. And I'm talking outside of the standard deviation of environmental impacts in a negative development of the evolution. So having the teachings is like software, and the psychedelics ends up impacting the operation of our hardware, which is like quantum computer. it allows us to be able to operate it and get more self-control. Right now, we try to exert so much control on other people because we really don't have internal control. Once we gain internal control, then life changes in its entirety. And I believe with the proper use of psychedelics and shamanic teachings, this is one of the avenues to attain that. And that's all I have to say about psychedelics.
Thank you very much. Again, great information. Appreciate you sharing it, making sure we get through everything. You brought up CRISPR. What does CRISPR stand for, and what is the significance of it?
I can't remember what it stands for, but basically it's a gene editing toolkit. It uses what's known as Cas9 as an editing tool. And the process, what's revolutionary about it isn't the gene editing, it's how cheap it's made it. There are people right now in their garages changing their own, doing gene therapy using CRISPR. You can order whatever you want and they'll print it for you and send it to you. So it's a tool and ability to change our DNA. And there's two ways of changing your genetics. One is that it only affects you and not your children. The other one, it becomes a gene that you can pass on. So once you make a change to you, you don't need to make it to your kid. Now, whether it's positive or not, it's going to stay if we go with that route. So that's on CRISPR. Transhumanism would be if you're incorporating cybernetics and artificial, whether it's through data or mind interface, through brain or augmenting muscles and other enhancements I'm sure everybody knows about. This is augmentation with technology. CRISPR is editing the genome. And then there's going to be the purists, the organics that are going to be there. And then there's going to be a combination of gene therapy and augmentation. And this is going to be personal choice. It's going to create a lot of debates, but by that time, our mentality would have changed. There'll be other issues that we'd be concerned about, and that's why maybe becoming a multi-planet species is going to be possible. If you can genetically modify and enhance the individual to live in a different environment, like the movie Titans, that there's a perfect example of that. So I just wanted to say that this sounds crazy, but all the data, all the information shows that if you have automation and if you have a pure line of humans and a combination of humans and automation and robotics or AI, the combination of humans and AI is far greater in efficiency than either of the other by themselves. So it's going to be a collaborative integration where it becomes possibly a symbiotic new level of consciousness. And if there is general AI and artificial sentient, and if we're looking for alien life, alien form isn't really their physiology that's relevant. It's the way they think. We look at an octopus or how a gang of pros think, and it's a different kind of intelligence, and they're finding even slime mold has an intelligence that went through the maze by itself. Intelligence is without brains, or the man of war that are multiple organisms. It's a brainless entity, but it's got multiple networks of nervous systems. That's alien, or you get non-organic being, or the, like in Arrival, the squid beings. What's important is how it thinks. And I believe artificial intelligence is the new birth of a different kind of intelligence, where it's been described humanity is the reproductive organs of artificial intelligence. Now, going there, I don't want to get into the scary parts or the good parts, because as I said, this is just a tool. How we develop these tools depends on our social fabric and not the technologies we have. That's it.
So I think the last topic we have to discuss is evolutionary branches of Homo sapiens. So can you comment? And
that's what I touched on. You can get you get a group that are just genetically modified, or you get a group that are more into just the cybernetic augmentation. So these are branching off. And in the past, before we became Homo sapiens, there was 3 branches. There were the nut eaters, the Goliath, and what became us. The nut eaters couldn't get enough protein. Goliath couldn't cool itself enough. And one thing they found with that evolutionary step of us, bones that showed childhood sickness on an adult female, which indicated that she was taken care of. So there was compassion there. They didn't abandon her. And that always reminded me of the meek shall inherit the earth. And I think we're getting to another branch of that, where we're going to try different avenues, and the one that's most appropriate by the ecology and the environment that we develop is going to prevail, or they all might.
Thank you very much. So why don't we open it up now for audience questions and comments? Does that seem reasonable?
I'm good.
Okay. So does anyone have a question or a comment for Mr. Bob Bant?
I have a few. It seems we're converging on a lot of similar topics, especially related to CRISPR and machine learning, and the progression of intelligences, and how we might be able to even identify alien intelligences if we don't even know what we don't even know. But as far as CRISPR is concerned, I believe I'm pretty sure it has a capacity to re-empower the small person as far as being able to empower themselves as far as medicine is concerned. What do you think is the most rapid and efficient path forward in creating a sort of grassroots CRISPR type situation where we're able to utilize CRISPR modified yeast of various sorts and ship them across the world to make, say, insulin or some interferon or some psychoactive compound that would prove helpful towards neurogenesis, and what would be a rapid and inexpensive way forward towards that?
That's a great question. From my understanding, this is where AI is going to be helpful by predicting the protein folds. Instead of introducing different compounds with gene therapy, they're trying to introduce a programmable aspect where it's partially, you can't separate it. Once you start the treatment, it's like with epigenetics, our environment is constantly changing us. So they've done studies with twins that had different upbringings with different disease resilience because of their gut flora. So our environment is going to be rapidly changing. So we need to have a tool that could dynamically and fluidly change as quickly as our environment is, so we can catch it. An example would be if a disease, a virus, a mutation comes out, and if it has a potential for mutation, if you catch it right away, you're okay. But once it starts to go out and mutate, if there isn't a baseline of immunity that could be artificially provided for the rest of the population, only the ones who are genetically immune to it will progress. So there isn't going to be a single fix to any of this. Decentralization, I heard that earlier, is key. And like you said, empowering the small person. I believe we're going to see so many levels of genius come out from garages with this tool and the capacity. And so many of them will be good-hearted. The whole exercise is going to be between how we use the technology versus the affordability or how the information gets disseminated to the public through open AI and people just sharing.
Is it- or-
I mean, I just watched a video about single cell protein development that's getting fermented. It's a new way of producing food, which is more organic than anything organic we can get now. It's pure cellular protein. There's these technologies are popping up everywhere. Now all we have to do is look at the supply chain, the logistics, distribution, and the politics of distributing the material. Before, you used to bring material to the port, and the lords, the warlords, would let it sit and spoil there to make sure that people aren't fed. With drone technology, you can just start zip zapping things everywhere, 3D printing. All you have to do is have the base program. We won't be buying clothes anymore. We print them and recycle that material. We just buy the design and the fashion. It's like a simulated metaverse. Everything we're doing at the metaverse also is coming back down here. And
Absolutely, and it's going to revolutionize how we approach each other and how we approach um, when a youth gets inspired to engage in a project, they don't have to wait until college anymore. They'll be able to get a couple kits from the internet, start working on with COVID sequences, and be able to make their own modified genome of some organism that they're interested in. And this also allows rapid innovation to any threats that come to face us. And this was even before I knew about CRISPR. I was given an assignment to figure out what would happen under. We were given different pathogens in our microbiology class, and I was given anthrax. And as a result of that, I came up with the idea that if some exterior threat tried to release a mutated form of anthrax to try to wipe out a large portion of the U.S., we could utilize these grassroots and these makerspace type organizations to rapidly innovate a way to mitigate and contain a bacteriological or a virological threat that we might face. We seem to be approaching such the beginnings of such with COVID, though there's still the large organizations trying to gain an extra foothold. But I do see us being in charge of our own immunizations and maybe even manufacturing our own vaccines and whatnot in something equivalent to a dishwasher or a microwave, our own gene editing appliance of some sort, like the PC of the future. What do you think of that sort of PC of the future? Just sort of a programmable gene editor of some sort.
I I think it's going to be the wild, wild west. I think people are going to do some crazy shit that we can't even think about. They already have human monkey, human pig hybrids for organs. Making or the problem isn't what we can do with it. The problem is the regulation that doesn't allow us to do anything with it. And before, it used to be contained in high security, very expensive labs. And now, like you said, everybody can start doing this. It's like you used to be a DJ, now you're a gene editor. You know, here, success playlist. It's gonna be crazy.
I'm excited by it though, man. I mean,
Oh,
it,
absolutely. I think it's very exciting. But I don't think humanity is at the maturity that it can use it without doing a lot of damage and a lot of harm. But so be it. You know, the people who invented the atomic bomb didn't know about radiation and died from radiation.
we said the same thing about the atomic bomb, and we still haven't completed a full form of mutually assured destruction. So that's a good sign that the genomic equivalent shouldn't lead us down a similar route.
Well, earlier on it was said you can get more division of wealth by the wealthy genetically giving a huge advantage to their children by intelligence and physical attributes and other means. I think what's going to happen, production is going to change on the planet. And once production changes and abundance is there, you won't have anything to fight anybody else for. It'll be out there for you to get it. You just have to go to do the work. And instead of going for material gains, we're going to focus more on interpersonal abilities. So learning different languages, different musical instruments, exploring. And as was said earlier, exploring is the most fun thing to do. We're right now in discomfort. There's a poem that says, if your small toe is in pain, your entire body suffers. So when we have different parts of humanity suffering the way they are, even though it's not in front of our mind, it affects the collective of the entire globe. So we're getting to the point where we're able to distribute that. I'm not criticizing that we're not doing enough, not by any means. But we're on cusp of, once we get cheap energy is a huge aspect because it affects production and transportation. And with new food, vertical farms and different natural protein development that they ferment them coming through, bellies are going to be full, everybody's going to be warm, so there's no need to fight anymore. This is when we're going to come and build and design things collectively that is beyond our capacity as a race right now. And during that composition of our development, that's when these tools are supposed to come in to express something positive. It's like a bullhorn. Somebody's on the edge. Are you going to say to them, jump, jump, jump? Or are you going to say to them, it's going to be okay, I've been there, let us help you? So this is the free will that we have, is do we want to use whatever technology in the positive, feeding the white wolf, or do we want to feed the dark wolf? And I think that's the relative element that's going to determine what you mentioned.
Thank you for your answer and for your questions, Techno Shaman. Also, does anyone else have a question or comment for Mr. Bob?
Yeah, I do, Bob. This is Ben. What do you say to the possibility of the powers that be, the government, not allowing this to occur in a positive way? What's your take on that?
I think they want to profit as much as they want, and if controlling us is the means to do it, they would love to do it. But I believe that it's too late for them. It's an old system that's dying. And it might take the older people now that are alive to die. It's going to dilute. The new generation is going to make it happen because we don't have a choice. They can see the demise as our foot if we don't change.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Thank you, Mystic. Thank you, Bob. Does anyone else want to get a question or a comment in here? All right, then, Bob, do you have any final thoughts or reflections you'd like to leave us with for the live audience and also the audience listening later on YouTube and BitChute and other platforms?
Thank you for having me, and I encourage people to discuss whatever fringe aspects that they're afraid to share because of being judged, and to become authentic, and they'd be surprised how many other people have the same point of view.
Thanks so much, Bob. Thank you for everyone listening and for your questions. Make sure you check out #RT Podcast, like, follow, subscribe. We've got 3 YouTube channels. a BitChute channel and a SoundCloud channel with more to come. And join us again at 8 when me and Hermes will be debating religion. Is it good or bad for society? Announcements channel will show you our upcoming events. Join the Roundtable Discord server. We're going to be recording podcasts every day at 9 and sometimes at other times as well. And that's PM Central Time. Church of Camelot convenes 11 a.m. Saturday for a biblical faith group meeting as well. So that being said, thanks guys. Let's jump up to, I don't know, Roundtable Chat or the pub. Thanks, Bob. God bless everybody.